purple here, our illustrious list of speakers. Our very first one is Peter Aikman. He is the president of Skydance Interactive. And Peter, it's a subsidiary of Skydance Media, so it has a long history creating and publishing original virtual reality experiences now in games. Peter has over 20 years experience in gaming and has spanned things such as The Evil Within, Armored Warfare, Free Realms, Medal of Honor, Spider-Man, and more. He also has a PhD from Berkeley. Go Bears. Or is that only an undergraduate thing to say?
More so, yeah.
Why don't I go ahead? I'm going to, unfortunately, I apologize. There's beautiful slides, but they're not clear. So there's not much to do about that.
Oh, we'll survive. So shall I roll?
You roll. Go ahead.
Well, hello, everyone. I appreciate being able to be included in this panel, and great to be talking to you today. So we got sort of a little overview of introducing myself and our company. I'm sure you're all familiar with Skydance Media, but Skydance Interactive is probably kind of a new concept to people. So I think a little background on how that came about and what it's all about is worth touching on. Anna Marie covered sort of my personal background, had a degree in math, but I'd been sort of a computer programming geek kid since I was 13 years old. Went and was co-founder of Treyarch back in 1996. That led to a lot of great games and a bunch of acquisition by Activision in 2001. And then a bunch of great stuff that Treyarch went on to do that I can't take credit for, but it's cool to see that happen. Then in 2008, I co-founded The Workshop with some of the people who'd been with me at Treyarch Times. We ran independent development here in Los Angeles for about 8 years, touching on some of the great titles that you mentioned there, including one you didn't mention, which was Sorcery for the PlayStation, which is notable especially because it was a motion control game. And it was like motion control 1.0. There was the Move, which lost the war. Then there was Kinect, which lost the war. That was the war with no winners. Motion control this time wasn't quite ready. So I can tell you when VR came on and motion control came on, it was like, oh, I know something about that. I think its time has come. So just over a year ago, our team at The Workshop joined Skydance, David Ellison's Skydance Media, to form Skydance Interactive. And it was our mandate from the outset that we were going to stand up a third pillar of the Skydance empire, putting Skydance Interactive, a gaming company, alongside feature film and television as its own independent commercial creative medium, not as an ancillary business of film and television. Of course, so it was going to be both a place where original ideas were created and, of course, work with the synergies that were going to exist with all the tremendous IP that Skydance is involved in on the film and television side. So that vision had existed for years, long before VR was even a thing. That was in the mind of David Ellison from the outset. But it was the advent of VR, and in particular, VR reaching a point where motion control came into it, and this was early last year. The Vive was launched. Oculus had announced the touch controllers, and Sony had been, of course, talking about their Move controllers and the PSVR, and like that was going to be a thing, but nobody paid much attention. But suddenly there was a consensus on this point. And it was clear to me, and it was just us at The Workshop, and just as clear to David at Skydance, that this was now a viable gaming platform. This was what was going to take this thing from an oddity, from a gee whiz, but so annoying we're not going to do anything serious with it, into something qualitatively different, qualitatively viable in a way that the old stuff was not. And so not only that, so it was a great opportunity for a new interactive company to come into existence. It was also a point where I think the unique synergy of Skydance's passion for storytelling, world building, event level entertainment was going to combine with our, sort of veteran gaming skill to sort of bring a unique alchemy that we thought was going to be necessary to take on the next generation, or I would almost say the first serious commercial generation of VR entertainment product. So there we were. It was clear enough to us that the platform was viable, but there was no product on it that was going to get gamers' attention just yet, or anybody's, a year ago. And so our work was pretty clearly cut out for us to go and make games that were going to get gamers' attention. Gamers who sat and played their Xbox and played their PlayStation all day, and PC even more so, the PC elite, get something that looked worth their time. And so we got to work. So a year elapsed, and here we are, more than a year later. And now a month before the release of our first commercial game, which you're going to see cycling up behind me, unfortunately, in beautiful RB color.
You'll just have to imagine the game.
You have to imagine it. So regrettably, I don't have a video today. I would have loved to share that with you. We've been prepping a big asset dump for E3, which is a gaming, for how many of you here know what E3 is? Okay,
Yeah,
thank goodness.
there you go.
The whole gaming Hollywood cultural rift, it's not quite as far as it used to be. I hope we're helping fix that. Well, at E3, we're going to be dropping a bunch of stuff, a trailer, a bunch of assets, so there's a lot coming. If you're here to get stuff, just get in line, and that stuff we'll get that out to you as quick as we can. So today I'm going to have to talk about it. So Archangel, this is our answer to this, trying to make a serious game for gamers. So let's talk about Archangel a little bit. What is it? Well, I like to think of it as the childhood fantasy of the giant robot brought to life. This is your shot. Drop into the cockpit of a big old giant robot. Suddenly you aren't the robot, you're a guy inside the robot. You're looking around, the head tracks your movement. You are 60 feet, you're 60 feet tall. You're a walking war machine. You grab touch controllers in the fiction of the story. The giant arms of the mech suddenly come to life outside. You're watching your hands move, not one-to-one, but something else, something that delivers the sense of scale and power, sort of things that VR can uniquely do in a way that a 2D screen would never convince you that you're having this experience. Brandish your weapons, get your shields up, soldier into battle against this tyrannical power that rules the post-apocalyptic future that we all fear is waiting for us. So of course we had to make some bra, and that was an early vision statement for the product, and just sort of core visceral things that VR was going to be so great for in creating this sort of immersive, compelling experience that previous media had been unable to attain. But we needed to do more. We needed to take this. This couldn't be a tech demo of, wow, I feel big. Okay, that was neat. One more thing. We had to wrap this into a real story. We had to tell a future war story. We had to build real worlds. We had to build beautiful graphics and scenes. We had to build cinematic combat, sequencing, storytelling. Though the game is mostly, in its fundamentals, a shooting game from a mech, there's a tremendous story being told along with it. You're engaged with your squad mates. You have enemies that are communicating with you. There are cinematic elements to the game that are taken from outside the position of the gaming, inside the mech, where you're one-on-one with people, both in third person and in first person. So we're taking sort of all the elements that were just starting to work, the vocabulary that was just starting to come together. And our novel thing wasn't, let's go invent another GWiz VR. We're not going to just build out, we're going to build up. We're going to make a real product out of this, a soup-to-nuts experience that had story, characters, beautiful graphics up to and compelling gameplay that was going to deliver a package that gamers were going to care about and was going to be commercially viable. So that's what Archangel is. I think it's tremendous. The thing's almost done. It's going to be coming out commercially in July on PlayStation, and shortly thereafter on the other premium platforms, the Vive and the Rift. Yeah. So you're getting some pictures of it there. It looks really cool.
Yeah, that's unfortunately, I think it was Johan had talked about having to fill in VR, filling in our imagination that other media hadn't done. Now we have to do the opposite.
I meant the green channel.
You meant the green channel, okay.
So, there's you're going to have to get pictures and sort of imagine. It is extremely cool, and no pictures are ever going to do it justice.
I wish I could see what I could see. Next up, next to Peter, is Neil Mant, who is Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Mant VR, which was his company before that was Mant Productions, Mant Brothers Productions, I believe. And he's an Emmy Award-winning producer as well. Yes, it was Mant Brothers Productions and Mant VR. His repertoire includes television, film, mobile, and now also immersive digital content. And his long history of credits, I encourage you to look at the Digital Hollywood booklet, ranges from the hit ESPN series Jim Rome is Burning to daily coverage of the O.J. Simpson trial for ABC News, as well as an award-winning series of short films, and I will let him fill in the blanks on that one.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm Neil Mant of Mant VR. I'm a producer. I've been in Hollywood now 25 years. I didn't know anybody when I came out here, got off the bus, was going to make it in this town, and now here I am talking to you guys. It's great. I started in news with NBC and then went to ABC News as a producer, produced the O.J. Simpson criminal trial, the Oklahoma City bombing, then got kind of tired of hard news and moved into feature films in the mid-'90s, and I directed 3 movies till 2000, and then was hired by NBC again to be a producer, this time at the Olympics in Sydney. And after that, I started Mant Brothers and created about 20-something different series of television, about 3,000 episodes of television total. And occasionally I would do a feature film or two. I had a movie out a few years ago for Disney called $1 Million Arm, and produced a lot of digital projects. So, my job has been finding stories that I can tell and brands or networks or studios who will buy that from me. And I found about 2.5 years ago that the television side of my world, which had been the core part of my business, was in trouble. It was very difficult, maybe 3 years ago, very difficult to close deals that should have been closed. And it turned out this was the cord cutting. Nobody knew it at the time, but I was just like, this business is unstable. I need to find something else to involve myself in. And so I looked at VR. VR was on the distant horizon, farther than I had thought originally, but still on the horizon. And I still believe strongly that it's coming. But as a guy whose company is called Mant VR, when I think the business is going to mature over the next 2 to 5 years, how is it that I make a living? How do I have a business? Well, it's reminiscent in many respects of early internet, and it's reminiscent of what happened in HD and SD, the transition. So early internet, when I first started looking at content, it was terrible. Most of the content I've seen I haven't been excited about, but the beginning was really bad. And it was obvious. It was like a website in 1995. An engineer had made the content. A person did not know story. They certainly didn't know how to use a camera that was a 360 sphere. And it didn't make me feel good. And so I identified it as an engineering problem. I said, all right, I just need to understand how it physically works, and then I can figure out the story. The transition part of it, like HD, if you recall, when you got your first HD television. So I bought mine in 2003, but as the producer of Jim Rome on ESPN, that show didn't go HD till 2009. So that was a 6-year transition period. And I had shows on Sci-Fi and on Food Network, and they were even later, 2010 for some of them. Not a problem at the time. The networks thought they were all saving a buck. But what happened is you go forward now to 2017, and everybody is the same here. If you're flipping your channels and you come across an episode of Three's Company and it's got those pillar bars on the side of it, that SD content, you are changing that channel. You're not watching that show. So that content has lost its value. That's not great for people with libraries. So we're in this transition again right now. And I say it's about 2 to 5 years from now, we're going to move from 360 and the beginnings of VR and AR to an immersive world. It's going to happen for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, it's going to save people money. But Apple is coming to the market. They're going to do something. It's going to change things, and it's going to happen. But it'll transition the same way. So as people are looking at it and they say, oh, I don't need to have any sort of immersive content. I don't need 360. I don't need that. I would argue they do, because in 5 years from now, 6, 7, whenever the moment of ubiquity happens, if you have that flat image and other people have immersive images, it's going to be far more jarring than HD to standard def. It'll be way more intense. So when I talk to brands and I talk to studios and I talk to networks, I educate them on the transition, and I say there is a way to have a business right now, and it's in good, high-quality 360 storytelling, because 2 billion people have these devices right now. And if you're making a good 360 video, when the immersive world really starts to explode, and beyond the 5 million Samsung Gears that are in the market and the 2 million HTC Vives and PlayStations and Oculuses, when it's not 7 million devices and it's 700 million or 2 billion, at that moment your content will be ready and it will start to flourish.
So Neil, you're saying that, starting now at the 360 level,
Yes.
and immersion is a way of future-proofing.
It's future-proofing the content. So now we talk about, well, how do you make 360 that's really good? What makes it good? What makes it exciting? What makes it worth our energy? And what makes it more enjoyable for an audience? Well, we've made content that we've released up through Facebook and through YouTube and through other platforms that have shown noticeable spikes in viewership for brands like Disney, Pittsburgh Steelers. And it's not something where they can argue it and say, well, you got lucky with that one. It's 4 times the 2D video. We're doing live streaming now in podcasting with Podcast One, Adam Carolla's shows. They were doing it 2D at 14,000 people watching it now. They're getting 70,000, 100,000 in live 360. So the audience is absolutely there as a 360 video. When the goggles become more common, it'll grow into the immersive world. But there are problems within the storytelling of 360 and in VR. How do you zoom? How do you pan? How do you move? How do you get it energetic when it's just this one image? I'd like to show you. So this is content that we're going to show you that's from YouTube. We're not going to touch the screen at all. Just trust me, it is all 360.
It's okay to play this?
Yeah, but I want you to look at this. This is all done in post. And so we did things to the video to color correct it and to have movement and to have it be far more energetic than just a flat image. This is great on a mobile phone. It's great on a cute computer, but it's incredible in goggles. Play it, please.
Okay. And I'm glad you did all that work on color correcting it. Yes. Do we have audio? Whoops. Oh, jeez. Where did it go? I'll just try it again. Wait. Audio. Yeah, audio's all the way up here. Do we have audio through the board? It's not coming through the audio cable.
So like all of these pans are all done in post. Zooms, snaps, and now we're going to go around the other way.
You want to come up and drive this? You can get the audio going. Sure, thank you.
Do we have audio in here?
Thank you.
So that's 360 content, but it plays similar to what we're used to in the 2D world. And that will work well on a mobile phone, but as I said, it's super awesome in goggles.
Very super awesome, and I wish you could see how green those hills are in particular. It's actually beautiful, really vibrant, beautiful color on that and a piece. In the interest of getting to all of our folks here, in the interest of getting to everyone, I'd like to move on to Kathy Twigg at the end. Can certainly follow up on what Neil was saying in terms of production challenges in particular. Kathy is co-founder and chief production content officer for the Rogue Initiative. Love the name of that company. Again, a group of award-winning professionals that hailed from Amblin Entertainment, Pixar, Disney, Activision. Kathy herself started out with MTV Films, continued on to work with DreamWorks Television Animation, Sony Pictures, and more. She's produced, directed, written several short films and web series, live-action television series, and is currently developing the company's IP for VR, interactive feature, and television products.
Thank you.
And there's her headshot.
I'm Kathy. I'm co-founder of the Rogue Initiative, and like she said, my background comes from traditional. It was not.
Oops.
I don't know how to turn it on. Can you hear me now? Awesome.
Hey, great.
So my background's traditional film and television, and we have a lot of relationships with very high-end directors, writers, actors that were looking to get into virtual reality and different worlds. So my co-founder comes from Amblin Entertainment and spent 8 years at Infinity Ward doing the Call of Duty series. So we have a nice, well-rounded background of film, television, and video games, and we're really looking to marry storytelling with interactivity. VR is the great, medium to do that. At Rogue Initiative, we have an in-house team, really great people that come from Infinity Ward, Ready at Dawn, Treyarch. They've spent 20 plus years in the engine. And what's great about doing a VR content with the gamers that they give the camera to the audience. They've been doing that for a long time. And that's something that I think helps us tell the stories that we want to tell in virtual reality. Can you go to the next slide? Mm-hmm. So you can see this is where a lot of our team comes from. And we have a lot of things in development right now. We have, next slide. Mm-hmm. This is some of the experience that our team has done. They've worked on Gnomes and Goblin, The Blue, that our design director, Nia Lamb, worked on that, and lots of Call of Duty and animation. So that's our team. So we have partnered with Michael Bay, and what we're doing is we look at IP and how it can cross over and really build out that world, because we are content creators, we are world builders, and so this is an original IP that we co-created with him that can live in a traditional game, a virtual reality, feature film, television, if we see it going that far. And what's really important and what we see is developing that the characters in that story from the start. So really thinking about where would this live in the film, in the game, in the TV series, and what does that virtual reality experience look like? So really working together with writers, with the team that's building it out, with the director, with everyone, and really doing that world building. And then we have another, and we'll be announcing more about the Bay game probably later this summer, so you'll be able to hear a lot more about that. And then we have Crow, which will be coming out May 30th, and that is an interactive virtual reality experience that will be on HTC, be released on HTC Vive for 2 weeks, and then it'll be out to all of the other, and we have a trailer to show you on the game.
Just get right over to that.
And then I think the slide lost, but we also shot a 360 virtual reality series in March called Agent Emerson, and that is in post right now, be coming out later later this year, probably in the summer, maybe June or August. So it's in post right now. And now we have Crow to show you.
Yeah, it's loading right now. It appears to be loading.
If it loads.
Yeah, it was loaded before, but hopefully it will.
And Agent Emerson does star Lindsay Fonseca and Tony Dennison, so we're very excited
Okay.
to have them on board with that.
Here we go.
And Ilya
Yeah.
Rostkov is our director, and he did a fantastic job.
Okay. Wow, beautiful.
So that's Crow coming out May 30th next week, and it does look beautiful. It doesn't look so red, at least from my point of view on the screen. But again, we really are focusing on storytelling and pushing the limits and pushing the boundaries of virtual reality and what we can do. And it's just really exciting working with everyone that we are working with and doing what we're doing. So,
Great, thank you.
I'm sorry? It'll be on HTC for 2 weeks as an exclusive, and then it'll be out everywhere.
I'll start with video. Okay. Get it ready. Well, let me.
Whatever you want to say.
Okay, let me just do your intro first. Okay, Johannes Sam is a senior developer with Framestore, and Johan is interesting because he had a very early interest in 3D and began by teaching himself. I should have had him on my panel yesterday, which was really geared towards Cal State University and other university people and how we learn and continue to learn. Certainly started out the way I think a lot of people may need to. He went on, though, not eschewing education anyway, to earn his master's in computer animation and then moved into feature film. And you produced Legend? Was that one that you worked on? Or?
Guardians, yeah.
Guardians, right, Guardians of the Legend. And he's also involved in an interesting Intel VR partnership with the Smithsonian American Art Museum. I'm going to start with a video. I just wanted to get his introduction so you knew whose video I was showing and for what purposes. And this is the front.
This is a reel for Framestore, the company I work for right now, and it's our applied technologies reel.
Okay, we got our audio going. One of the things that Johannes and I discussed in particular was the purpose of VR, and really of all media to some extent, to not have VR for the sake of VR and the gee whiz factor, but for it being purposeful and maybe it being evolutionary, even more than revolutionary, taking, rather than just remediating media that we're used to seeing in this new form, but taking it to another level.
Thank you. Yeah. So thank you for having me on the panel. So I started, as you said correctly, as a self-taught 16-year-old, 14-year-old nerd in a basement. And that led to a lot of graphics experience at home. And then, thank God, I got a job and started to work in the film industry as a regular 3D animator, effects animator. And did that for 12 years, just interrupted by going to England to university for a year. And I always switched between the graphics end of things, the creative end of things, and the programming and the research and development side of things, which is very prominent in the entire ZG pipeline. And I think this is what VR also stands for. It's exactly the mix of art and science where it really comes together. So I was very lucky to then get recognized by the Academy for a piece of technology called deep image compositing 4 years ago, which is also, again, an extension of regular flat images into the 3D space, which is what VR is also standing for. So this all led me personally to join Framestore about 2-3 years ago, where Framestore is a company that is 30 years old in the visual effects space and animation space, and it's coming out of London. Started with music videos in the 80s, then via lots of Oscar-winning effects through the 90s and the early 2000s into now extending through integrated advertising together with brands into the VR, AR, whatever space that exists that we expand in. So Framestore VR Studios in New York was one of the first actual designated only VR studios in that space, and has since created amazing experiences for Time Warner, for the Fantastic Beasts, for the Field Trip to Mars that you've just seen, where we transformed an entire school class that I thought they were taking a regular field trip to Mars by mapping New York and then remapping New York on Mars, and then using screens that are semi-transparent. So they were first thinking they're on a regular school trip, and then it would end up in a very different environment. And in Los Angeles, we are focused on integrated advertising and have created lots of VR experiences. And as you said, rightfully, we're trying to always not use any technology, or especially VR, for VR's sake. We're trying to make it a unique experience that has purpose and that uses VR and those technologies for a reason. So we've recently partnered up with Stanford and Time Life magazine for a experience called Lumen, which is a relaxation meditation app, which is deployed to children in traumatic experiences that, for example, go through surgery and they just need to relax and need to get their minds taken away. So this helps. This extends from the pure entertainment factor into a different space, and I think this is where VR and especially AR has their focus, or should have their focus, is in entertaining people, but also using it as a purposeful tool to create new worlds that take your mind away and make you enjoy in general.
Thank you. On that note, I'm going to pass this on over to Clay Weishar. Is it Weishar or Weishar? Weishar, from Tool, since we were just talking about tools.
Hi, I'm Clay Weishar, and I'm a creative director of augmented and virtual reality at Tool of North America. We're a production company focused a lot on creating brand experiences, brand-driven experiences for augmented, virtual, and experiential VR. And it's interesting, I was here last year talking about a VR experience and just seeing how many headsets have happened since the time I was here last, and that's literally been a year, and we're seeing so many more, headsets pop up. And, after a handful of VR experiences, I had the privilege, our head of VR introduced us to Clayton Beal at Fox Innovation Studios, and he's like, you got to check this out. He had an early preview of the HoloLens, and he's like, try this on, play around with it, experiment. And I got to say, it really kind of changed my perception of storytelling and had me think I guess, about in a completely different way where you're exploring, spatial storytelling and being able to move through the space and have the story kind of unfold in front of you and not be limited to being tethered to a headset or, confined to a certain square, and actually being able to track through, a large environment. So I started experimenting with it a lot and having a lot of fun. My neighbors think I'm pretty weird because I live by the Venice canals, and I'm working on a little film right now, and they always see me with this like cyborg thing on my head, and they're just like, what is that guy doing? But just being able to explore collision zones and, as somebody walks forward and where they direct their gaze, being able to tell a story that way. So what sort of started off as experiments translated into an actual project for the company I'm at. Intel came to us and they said, how are we going to tell the story of our autonomous technology, like how we're powering automated driving? And I just we got to do it through HoloLens. We got to, do it through augmented reality, because the premise was they wanted to have a BMW i8 kind of as the centerpiece of the experience, and then tell the story on how, 4G is getting sent to the cloud, the car's collecting data, basically a whole kind of holographic narrative. So we pitched an idea to them, and they absolutely loved it. They're like, okay, let's do this. And in our initial pitch, we were thinking 10 HoloLens headsets and sort of connecting together and letting people experience this. And it turned out there's an Intel chip inside the HoloLens. So it's a perfect partnership, between Microsoft and Intel. So they're like, well, how about we give you 40? What can you do with those? And I'm like, damn. It was really exciting. So I think I'll play the case study video first to just kind of show you what I'm talking about, and then go into a little bit of kind of behind the scenes production of it.
Go roll it. There we go. Wow.
Yeah.
Is that-
So it was cool to see Shaq try to fit a HoloLens on his head and trip out and see holograms. That was kind of what really made it for me. I think the biggest thing, in producing that and directing it was just being able to understand the limitations of the technology, educating the client in where AR technology is right now. You're still looking at a 45-degree field of view, so you're kind of looking through a window, and you have to design around those limitations. And then also understanding how you can precisionally map holograms to a physical object in a sort of mixed reality facet. So basically what we did is we spent hours in a garage in Las Vegas with a BMW i8 trying to precisely map holograms on the car. And that was super challenging. It was, we were like, how do you do this? Because certain reflective properties of the paint and the glass and, you know, occlusion mapping, having holograms not show through certain areas, it was extremely challenging. It took about 2 weeks of just like calibration until we actually tried something new where we used what's called poster tracking, and we had that on the back of the vehicle, and we had sort of a marker on the back of the car that actually really helped kind of anchor everything to the vehicle. So once we had that, we tried it at CES, did a lot of tests, and it worked out pretty well.
It looks like it worked out really well. Actually, it was incredible. You know, I've heard people say that this medium VR is not going to be created and developed by 3 kids in a garage. But when you're working with AI and automobiles, I don't know how the garage cannot be part of the equation. With that, I'd like to introduce, because we only got a little bit time left, and we're going to try to extend it, take some questions at the end. I don't know if it's going to be possible, but Clay was going to try to do a live demo of.
I brought a headset with
You brought
experience
it.
on it, so people
So
are
we'll
welcome
see if
to
they don't
try
throw
it.
us out of the room. But first, let's not miss out on Sandy Smolin, who is an award-winning director and producer. His work also spans documentaries, televisions, commercials, VR films. He had a critically acclaimed debut feature, Rachel River, at the won the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance. He recently directed the VR film Click Effect, and I think you're going to come up here and drive this one, right?
I am.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to switch places, and he's going to take over. So if we can get out of that, and you can, I already queued you up, and it seemed to have kept its
Okay,
place.
so let's go back to the PowerPoint.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. How do we get there?
Yeah, I might have to escape the other thing.
Wait, actually,
No, it'll, yeah,
there it is.
that's it, okay.
Go down to it.
Okay. Here we go, okay, and
Let's go from there.
you want it in,
Oh, yeah, so presenter mode.
where the hell is that one up here?
Where is it?
Yeah, there it is, okay.
So I'm going to keep my remarks as short as possible because I know we're at the end here. But I want to talk about 3 things, which is the philosophical, the practical, and finding audiences. I have the best job in the world. I get to move back and forth between features, TV, commercials, documentaries, and now VR films. And if there's one common thread to all the work, it's that it needs to really resonate. And I think that's so important in VR these days, that we really need to make great content that pushes the envelope and really gives viewers an experience unlike anything they've ever seen before. And if it doesn't have that wow, if it doesn't really push the medium, we're going to lose audiences very quickly. Let me go back here. So I'm just going to play a little video about the making of the film we did. So, hold on for 1 second here. So one of the things that we found when we finished the film, actually in making the film, that's so important right now is partnerships. In this new world, it's really hard to get these films made. There's not a lot of money for them, and to get them out and get them seen is really difficult. And I think one of our successes had to do with the fact that we were able to pull together some really amazing partners. So we started with Within. We brought the project to Within. They brought in Sundance. Sundance then in turn brought in the MacArthur Foundation. We then collectively went to Annapurna, which helped found additional funding. We brought in Legend to help with visual effects. We decided to do our really big launch. We did a soft launch at Sundance, did our full premiere at Tribeca, and then we worked with the New York Times to do our real big platform release. The Times gave us 5 days of full-page ads. I'm sorry, let me get it into full screen here. Hold on 1 second. The Times gave us 5 days of full-page ads, which is pretty amazing for a 5-minute VR film. But it really goes to, if you're doing these things, it's so critical to get really other partners on board. So the last thing I want to talk about is finding an audience. When we finished the film, one of the things that I've felt as a director that I miss is the shared experience. And I think that as much as there's a big push to mobile, it's really important to think about how people can watch VR together, particularly if we want people to adopt it. This was at the Samsung store in New York, and we saw this, and this idea of being able to let people watch VR together took hold. And we were approached by a science center in Seattle that wanted to show the film to their audience, and asked us if we could put something together. And we realized that there's this huge market. More people go to science centers, museums, aquariums, and planetariums than go to sporting events. And they're all really hungry for VR. So we've just started a new company that is now building VR experiences. Let me go back here one. VR is going back, and we're building theaters for science centers now. And it turns out people just love having the experience together. And outside of LA and New York and the big cities, most people out there are not buying headsets. They're barely looking at it on their phones. And so there's this huge market out there that's not being tapped. And we found that they are just flipping out. The response to the theaters has been incredible. So we just launched our second theater in Kansas City. We're in partnership to do about 40 of these by the end of the year. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Actually, your last comments, I'm going to throw this open to questions. Certainly want to thank all of these wonderful panelists. Peter actually brought something up that I really like. It was one of my favorite questions on here. We were talking, I kind of lapsed into an old standby of talking about media converging, C-O-N. And Peter immediately said, well, I rather think of it as divergent and diverging. So I started thinking about that more, and I went back and kind of referenced Henry Jenkins, who wrote, famously wrote about media convergence and spreadability and such. And what I'd like you all to think about, maybe starting with Peter, but just I asked, well, why divergence is not convergence? And Jenkins had later said that convergence requires compromise and divergence satisfies the evolving needs of the marketplace. And I certainly think that Sandy was speaking to that in terms of the shared experience. Others on the panel talked about the shared experience. Could you kind of address this idea of the evolution of the marketplace and what compromises or not are needed?
Just about the idea of divergence.
Yeah, yeah, as you were telling me, yeah.
I think it was that convergence fuels the imagination and divergence fuels the market, or something along
Yeah.
those lines.
Yeah.
Well, what it
Yeah.
comes down to is that these new technologies, to me, add dimensions to our entertainment experience. They don't wipe out, television didn't annihilate cinema. It added a whole nother dimension to the way we consume content. Mobile didn't annihilate the living room, though you could, it's the next big thing, it's going to change everything. Well, it did change everything, but it added a whole new dimension to our entertainment space. Thing is, new technologies that aren't strictly, sometimes it's replacative. HDTV is just better than standard def, and it was going to wipe it out. Was it going to?
Right.
That was obvious. But
Right.
ones that add new dimensions that are fundamentally different and new than what the previous technologies had. Sure, you're going to have some convergence elements, but really it's broadening out that and enriching that space of media, space of technology, space of our lives, really.
Right.
So I feel like even to me, the imagination goes to divergence because it's those new possibilities that really fuel,
Yeah, well, I think, and you were the one who definitely said that convergence fuels the imagination. I think it was Jenkins who said that I was reading later that it's
Right.
about compromise, but it is in the sense that if you get lemons, make lemonade, sort of thing, that is this grasping at the tools, creating a new language, creating new ways to do things. Yes, Johannes.
It's also very important to know that, or to note, is that those new technologies are having a way bigger impact on the entire production pipeline of your entertainment than the switch from an SD to an HD TV did. You could still use the same editing package. You could still use the same. Yes, you had more data to deal with, and you need to get more powerful machines. But right now we're at a diverging point where it's like we have to reinvent the entire production pipeline. We are about to release because you mentioned the collective or the experience together is very important. This is important for the audience, but also as a client to a classic production company, that if you want to have a color grading session and about your commercial, it's like you don't want to just sit in a headset alone and give comments to a room full of people who don't wear headsets because nobody realizes what you're talking about. So I think it's very important to collaborate on all fronts, to actually have a collaborative experience as a client, but also as a consumer of this technology. And we do not have the new language yet. We don't have a film language that is working in 360. I mean, there's lots of people who create crazy and amazing content, but we have not set that in stone yet, and we don't want to, because if we start to limit ourselves and our creativity now by coming up with all those rules, we're not going to get far. So I think right now is a time to experiment and to create the rules and the workflows and the creative elements that we will later use on a daily basis in virtual reality.
I couldn't agree more. We're really in the first days of this. It's so primitive right now, but
Absolutely.
the possibility is just endless and quite wonderful.
Anyone else want to touch on that, Kathy? Or did you want to address that question, or should we take some from the...
I didn't hear it.
Oh.
Kind of muffled over there, so.
I'm planning the rest of my next 3 days. We were talking about divergence and convergence in the media, and that kind of helping stimulate the marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I didn't hear exactly what they said, so sorry if I repeat anything, but I think, that's what we're trying to do when we look at an idea or a story that we're trying to tell in virtual reality, and really try and put that across different mediums. And, if we have a TV show that can stand alone as a series, or a virtual reality on the same subject that stands alone as a series, but then you put the Easter eggs in and you put the clues in, and you can really drive audiences to both places. I think that's where you're going to really get the consumer involved, and kind of where the next steps are going towards entertainment. There are projects we're developing like that right now, and if you have that VR experience and the TV experience, you're really getting that whole 360, if you will, of what's going on in the story or the characters. And I think that's kind of where that convergence is headed.
Right. Thank you. We're going to take a few questions here and see if we can go a little longer, since we got kind of a late start looking for dongles to work. and such. And Clay is going to set up over here in the front with the HoloLens. So if people want to take a look through it and see how it looks through the actual HoloLens, you'll have an opportunity to do that. But while we still have a few moments, I'd love to take any questions from the audience for any of our panels. Yes.
It sounds to me like most of you are working on the experiential and gaming. Have you thought about the narrative telling of a story, almost more like film, but instead of the point of view of just the one director, making it be the person's story? Are you experimenting with that?
I can start,
Yes.
or sorry, you start.
Yes, we are. That is what we're doing. For instance, the Agent Emerson that we shot in 360 in March, you are the camera, right? I mean, you are the main person that goes through this, that interacts with the other actors. Like I said, for the games and the interactivity that we're having, like Crow, with our team, they've been used to giving the camera to the audience. So it's not you a fly on the wall looking at everything. While those experiences are great, I think the next level is having that interactivity and really participating. So we are experimenting. I mean, it's new medium, so we're seeing what we can do and push those boundaries and working with really talented and smart people that love this medium and just see where we can go.
What we are also experimenting with is that a classic linear way of telling a story, like in a theater or a movie environment, is not necessarily going to work. Because if you are in a 360 or in a virtual world, you drive as the viewer where your attention goes. So if imagine a party and you need to listen to all conversations in the party, and if you do not listen to those conversations, you miss parts of the story. So we are trying to structure our experiment or our narratives in ways where we make sure we only advance the narrative once we are 100% sure, and we can track where you're looking. We know what you have experienced. We only drive the narrative forward once we are sure that you have gotten the right bits of information to get the story.
Otherwise, the story can't be followed. Yes.
I could just throw in a quick remark. Certainly storytelling, coming from a super gamey perspective, a lot of what makes big, compelling modern games compelling is the good stories that go along with them. I mean, and many other things. Story is always part of it, and the way games tell stories, player agency always drives them. Right? I should say the best stories that games tell. Once it's been said that games don't tell great stories, but they craft them, or they let the viewer craft them. So there's something so intensely interactive about VR. It almost seems kind of cruel to invite your audience up on stage and not let them participate in how the story unfolds. But
The cruelest medium. Anyone else? There's one here in the back on the right.
Sure. So we shot the pilot, which will be 6 to 10 minutes long. It's in post right now. We have it mapped out for 13 episodes, and it's part of a bigger world because that's what we're doing is world building. So this would be the VR series. We have it mapped out for a television series as well, again with those Easter eggs and following different characters and pulling those two stories together. It will be out, we have a Samsung channel. We're talking with, all the partners right now, but we haven't come to a deal yet because someone exclusive, so we're just working that out right now. But it will be widely available probably in June or July.
Wow. Another one right here.
Thanks for everyone. It was really interesting. What would you say if somebody comes from the more traditional film, TV world to transition into your world? What would be the best way to do it? I mean, taking classes at UCLA extension, or I don't know. What would be the best way to transition into this new world?
Come up with a great idea and find someone to partner with.
Yeah. Yeah, I come from the traditional world, and I have been independent. I've never had a job. I've always been on my own, and so I was faced with an industry around me having serious turmoil, which shouldn't be a surprise to any of us. We saw what happened to newspapers and magazines, and so we are in the time period of the Great Disruption. But I would agree. You find somebody who's better than you and work with them. But this entire industry is going to live on partnerships. That's all I look. Everyone at this table, I'm going to work with on something differently than what I do. I do live content. I do real person. I don't do CGI. I look for other people to partner for that. So look for somebody better and work with them.
And also don't forget that you haven't missed the boat yet. It's not that like this big VR thing has happened already and some people haven't. It's like you will not find somebody who can truly say, besides some professor at certain universities, that say they have really done VR for more than 10 years. I mean, it's a new thing. And as I try to say, like we have every production. Almost every production is a we have to reinvent the wheel. We have to reinvent how we show it to you as a client. We have to how you bring you into the process. How we can help you. How we can find partners. It's not a linear thing yet. We're all trying to figure out the same things. We're all in the same boat. We just have to figure out how to steer it as partners.
The boat that hasn't left the harbor yet.
Yeah.
Yep.
At universities, by the way, I didn't introduce myself at the beginning, but you can see there I teach at CSUN, Cal State University Northridge. I was at AFI for 10 years. I worked with ABC, Primetime Entertainment, E! Entertainment, public television, a whole host of different things over the years. We now have a VR production class at CSUN. I teach one that's a lecture class that covers all types of new digital media, but there's a production class, and we had a multimedia festival last night, photography, digital art, animation, and the instructor of that literally got up and introduced the VR pieces and said, I bet all of my students can say that I was learning as much as them as we went along, for which he got a standing ovation. And he thanked them all for their patience. And I thank you all for your presence. We have to kind of wrap it up here in the room. As I said, a panel of power brokers in this new and nascent field. We'll try. I guess Clay may set up over here with the HoloLens, and we need to break everything else down in the meantime.